The Tuesday afternoon sun filtered through the skylights of Richmond's premier shooting range, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Jake Mitchell loaded his Sig Sauer P320 with practiced ease, his movements mechanical, precise, the product of 8 years in the Marine Corps and 2 years of civilian life that still felt foreign and empty. He'd come here 3 times a week since leaving the service. The range was the only place where everything made sense, where muscle memory took over and the noise in his head quieted. The familiar weight of the pistol, the smell of gun oil and cordite, the controlled chaos of controlled violence. It was home in a way his apartment never would be. Jake adjusted his shooting glasses and aligned his stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, slight forward lean, grip high and tight. The fundamentals his instructors had drilled into him until they became instinct. His mind drifted to Syria, to the rooftop in Raqqa where everything had gone wrong, where his spotter. A metallic clatter snapped him back to the present. 3 lanes over, a woman had dropped her pistol magazine. She fumbled to pick it up, her movements awkward and uncertain. Jake watched as she struggled to reload, her grip all wrong, her stance a disaster waiting to happen. She was maybe 5'6", lean build, short brown hair tucked under a baseball cap. Mid-30s, he guessed. Civilian clothes, jeans, and a loose flannel shirt. His instructor instincts fired immediately. Someone was going to get hurt if she kept handling that weapon like a stranger. Jake cleared his weapon, set it down, and walked over. "Excuse me, miss, first time shooting." The woman looked up, and for a fraction of a second something flickered in her dark eyes, amusement, recognition. But it vanished so quickly Jake thought he'd imagined it. "That obvious," she said with a self-deprecating smile. "I'm terrible at this." "Everyone starts somewhere," Jake said, offering his hand. "Jake Mitchell, former Marine, I used to teach marksmanship. Mind if I give you a few pointers? Safety issue more than anything." Emma Clark, though she'd been born Emma Mitchell and had once carried the rank of commander, studied the man before her with carefully concealed interest. Corporal Jake Mitchell. She remembered him clearly from the 2012 Advanced Scout Sniper course at Quantico. Cocky, talented, infuriatingly confident. He'd been 23 then, the youngest Marine in her class, and his ego had filled the entire shooting range. He'd also been one of the best natural shooters she'd ever trained. Now he stood before her, 7 years older, still handsome but carrying weight in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Combat did that. She could see Syria written in the tightness around his mouth, in the way his gaze constantly scanned the room. She knew that look intimately, saw it in her own mirror every morning. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? She'd lost 40 pounds since her SEAL days, cut her long blonde hair short and dyed it brown, and now wore civilian clothes instead of fatigues. The wedding ring was gone. Commander Mitchell had divorced and reclaimed her maiden name. Even her posture was different, deliberately softer, less military. She'd worked hard to disappear. And here was a ghost from her past, offering to teach her the fundamentals she'd invented. This was too perfect to resist. "I'm Emma," she said, taking his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "Emma Clark. And honestly, yes, I could use all the help I can get. This is my 3rd time here and I still feel like I'm going to shoot myself in the foot." Jake smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. "You won't, not on my watch. What made you decide to learn?" Emma had her cover story ready. "I'm a freelance photographer. Sometimes I work in sketchy neighborhoods for shoots. Figured I should learn to protect myself." "Smart, okay, first thing, let's look at your grip." For the next 45 minutes, Jake walked Emma through the fundamentals. Grip, stance, sight alignment, trigger control, breathing. He was patient, thorough, and surprisingly humble in his teaching style. Emma was impressed. The cocky corporal had matured into a decent instructor. She deliberately made mistakes, anticipating recoil, improper finger placement, flinching, all errors she'd corrected in hundreds of students. It was oddly entertaining to play the novice, to watch Jake explain concepts she'd taught him years ago. "See how you're tensing your shoulders," Jake said, standing behind her to adjust her stance. "You need to relax. Shooting is about control, not force. My old instructor used to say it's like holding a bird, firm enough it can't fly away, gentle enough you don't crush it." Emma's breath caught. Those were her words, her metaphor. She told Jake that exact thing during a particularly frustrating training session when his grip kept shifting. "That's beautiful," she said softly, meaning it. "Your instructor sounds wise." "Commander Mitchell," Jake's voice carried reverence. "Best sniper instructor I ever had, probably the best in the Navy. Nobody knows where she is now, left the service a few years back. But she changed my life, taught me that shooting isn't just about hitting targets. It's about discipline, patience, understanding yourself." Emma felt emotion tighten her throat. She'd left after the Kandahar operation, after losing Martinez, Chen, and Thompson. 3 of her best students, 3 people she'd trained and led into an ambush her intelligence had missed. The Navy had cleared her of wrongdoing, but she'd never forgiven herself. "She sounds like someone worth remembering," Emma managed. They shot for another 30 minutes. Emma deliberately scored decent groupings, good enough to show improvement, not good enough to raise suspicion. Jake praised her progress, clearly pleased with his teaching. As they packed up, Jake hesitated. "Look, I know this is forward, but would you want to meet here again? I could give you proper lessons, no charge. Honestly, it helps me too. I've been struggling to find purpose since I left the Corps. Teaching reminds me why I loved it." Emma saw the vulnerability in his admission, the loneliness. She recognized it because she carried the same weight. "I'd like that," she said. "Same time Thursday." "It's a date. Well, not a date, a lesson, you know what I mean." Jake actually looked embarrassed. Emma laughed, her first genuine laugh in months. "Thursday, it's a lesson." As she drove home, Emma wondered what she was doing. She'd built a quiet life, stayed invisible, avoided anything connecting to her past. But something about seeing Jake again, about the opportunity to understand who her former student had become, intrigued her. Maybe she was curious, maybe she was lonely, maybe she missed teaching more than she'd admitted. Whatever the reason, Emma Clark, formerly Commander Emma Mitchell, Navy SEAL sniper with 87 confirmed kills, was going back to the range Thursday. And she was going to let a man she'd trained teach her how to shoot. The irony was delicious. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that surprised them both. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons became sacred, 2 hours at the range where Jake taught and Emma learned, or pretended to. For Jake, teaching Emma brought something back he thought he'd lost in Syria: purpose, direction, the simple satisfaction of watching someone improve under his guidance. She was a natural student, attentive, asked smart questions, never made the same mistake twice. Well, almost never. Sometimes she'd repeat an error he'd already corrected, which frustrated him, but he reminded himself that learning took time. For Emma, the experience was more complex. She was conducting an experiment, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was testing for. Jake's teaching ability, his character, or perhaps her own capacity to connect with her past without drowning in it. Whatever it was, she couldn't deny she looked forward to their sessions. "You're dropping your elbow again," Jake said on their 8th session, standing close behind her at the firing line. "Keep it up. The weapon should feel like an extension of your arms, not something you're wrestling with." Emma adjusted, deliberately overcompensating. Jake's hand gently corrected her position, and she felt the certainty in his touch, the confidence of someone who truly understood the mechanics of shooting. "Better," he said. "Now before you fire, I want you to do something. Close your eyes." Emma obeyed, intrigued despite herself. "Feel your heartbeat," Jake continued, his voice dropping to that teaching tone she recognized from her own instruction days. "Find the pause between beats. That's where you squeeze the trigger, not during the beat, in the silence between." Emma's chest tightened. She taught this technique to advanced students, but she'd never heard anyone else explain it quite this way. Jake had taken her lessons and made them his own, refined them through experience. "Where did you learn that?" she asked, eyes still closed. "Afghanistan, 2016. Had a close call with a Taliban sniper. My spotter, Ramirez, he saved my life by making an impossible shot. Afterward, he told me he'd stopped trying to time his shots and started listening to his body instead. Changed everything for me." Emma opened her eyes and fired. The round punched through the target's center mass, a perfect shot she immediately regretted. Too good for a 3-week novice. Jake's eyebrows rose. "Okay, that was really good, Emma, like really good." She manufactured a surprised laugh. "Beginner's luck." "Maybe," but Jake looked unconvinced, studying her with new attention. Emma deliberately botched the next 3 shots, but she could feel his suspicion growing. She needed to be more careful. The game was only interesting if Jake didn't realize they were playing. During their break, they sat in Jake's truck in the parking lot, drinking coffee from the range's vending machine. These conversations had become as important as the shooting lessons. Emma learned that Jake had left the Marines 2 years ago after a deployment to Syria that he rarely discussed in detail. He worked as a security consultant now, corporate buildings, wealthy clients, boring work that paid well but felt meaningless. "I keep thinking about going back," Jake admitted, staring at his coffee. "Re-enlisting. At least in the Corps, I knew what I was doing mattered." "Why don't you?" Emma asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Syria broke something in me. I was on a rooftop in Raqqa with my spotter, Sergeant Torres. We were providing overwatch for a patrol when an IED went off. He was 24, kid from Texas, always talking about his daughter." His voice cracked slightly. "I got him out, but he died before the medevac arrived. I keep thinking, if I'd been faster, if I'd seen the insurgent who triggered it, if I'd made different calls." Emma's hand found his shoulder without thinking. She knew this guilt intimately, the weight of command, the impossible burden of other people's lives. "It wasn't your fault," she said quietly. "Everyone says that, doesn't make it true." "No," Emma agreed. "But blaming yourself doesn't honor his memory either. Torres wouldn't want you drowning in guilt. He'd want you to live." Jake looked at her with sudden intensity. "You sound like you know something about survivor's guilt." Emma froze internally but kept her expression neutral. "My father was Army, lost friends in Iraq. I grew up watching him carry that weight." It wasn't entirely a lie. Her father had been Army, but her own guilt was far more personal. Jake nodded slowly, accepting the explanation. "Commander Mitchell, my instructor at Quantico, she once told our class that the hardest part of being a sniper isn't taking the shot. It's living with every shot you didn't take, every person you couldn't save." I didn't understand what she meant back then. And now I think about Torres every day and understand perfectly. Emma had to look away, blinking against unexpected tears. She'd said those words to Jake's class after losing her first student in combat, a young SEAL named Diaz who'd been killed during a hostage rescue in Somalia. She'd been 28, still believed she could save everyone, still thought perfect training meant perfect outcomes. Kandahar had finally destroyed that delusion. "Your Commander Mitchell sounds like someone who understood the cost," Emma said carefully. She did. There were rumors she left the SEALs after losing people on an operation. Nobody knows the details, it's all classified, but she just disappeared. Part of me wishes I could find her, thank her for the lessons. The shooting lessons, yeah, but more than that. She taught us how to be warriors and still stay human. That's rarer than you'd think. Emma's throat felt tight. Maybe she needed to disappear. Maybe staying was too hard. "Maybe," Jake said, "but I hope she knows how many people she saved through the snipers she trained. Her legacy is still out there, protecting people." They sat in comfortable silence, and Emma felt the walls she'd carefully constructed beginning to crack. Jake wasn't the arrogant corporal anymore. Syria had humbled him, matured him, forced him to confront the reality she tried to prepare all her students for, that courage and skill weren't enough, that good people died despite your best efforts, that survival came with its own scars. "All right," Jake said finally, gathering himself. "Enough heavy talk. Let's go shoot some more. I want to see if you can replicate that perfect shot from earlier." "Probably not," Emma said, standing. "Definitely beginner's luck." But as they walked back into the range, Emma made a decision. She couldn't keep this deception going indefinitely. Eventually, Jake would figure it out, or she'd slip up, or the past would catch up with her in some other way. She'd give it one more week. Then she'd decide whether to tell him the truth or walk away. What she didn't know was that fate would make that decision for her, and much sooner than she expected. As Emma took her position at the firing line, neither of them noticed the man watching from the range's observation area. Viktor Kozlov had come to scout potential recruits for his operation, and his attention had been caught by the former Marine with the confident stance. But his gaze kept drifting to the woman with Jake. Something about her movements, the way she held the weapon, triggered a memory he couldn't quite place. Victor pulled out his phone and snapped a photo. He'd run it through his facial recognition software later. Just to be sure, the Riverside Tactical Shooting Competition drew crowds every Saturday, transforming the outdoor range into a festival of firearms enthusiasts, vendors, and competitors from across Virginia. Jake had registered them both 2 weeks ago, insisting it would be a great experience for Emma. Now, standing in the competitor staging area with 40 other shooters, Emma felt the familiar pre-operation calm settle over her. This was a mistake. She should have declined, made excuses, but something in Jake's enthusiasm had made her agree. "Nervous?" Jake asked, adjusting his competition belt. He'd entered the expert division, pistol and rifle combined stages that would test speed, accuracy, and tactical movement. "Terrified," Emma lied, though her hands were steady as she checked her borrowed competition pistol, a Glock 34 that felt foreign compared to her preferred weapons. "You'll do fine. It's just the novice division, stationary targets, no time pressure. Just remember everything I taught you." Emma smiled. "Everything you taught me, got it." The morning progressed with typical competition energy, the crack of gunfire, the smell of powder, the announcer's voice booming across the range. Emma watched Jake compete in his division, and despite everything, she was impressed. He'd placed 4th out of 32 shooters, his movements efficient and confident. The cocky corporal had become a genuinely skilled shooter. When her division was called, Emma approached the firing line with calculated casualness. The course was simple: 3 target arrays at 7, 15, and 25 yards. 2 shots each target, reload, repeat, scored on accuracy and time. She could complete this course in under 8 seconds with perfect accuracy. But Emma Clark, amateur photographer with 3 weeks of training, would need closer to 20 seconds with maybe 70% accuracy. The buzzer sounded. Emma drew smoothly, not too fast, and engaged the first array. Her shots were deliberately imperfect: 2 center mass, 1 slightly right, 1 slightly left. Professional enough to seem competent, flawed enough to seem inexperienced. She reloaded with a fumble that cost her 2 seconds, then engaged the remaining targets with calculated precision. When she finished, her time was 22.4 seconds with 11 of 12 shots in the scoring zones. 3rd place in the novice division. Exactly where she'd aimed to be. Jake found her afterward, his expression complex, pride mixed with something darker, surprise, maybe even threat. 22 seconds, he said slowly. "You beat 9 other shooters, Emma, some who have been shooting for years." "Beginner's luck," Emma offered, but the phrase was wearing thin even to her own ears. "That's the 2nd time you've had beginner's luck that looked a lot like skill." Jake's tone wasn't accusatory, but questions lurked beneath his words. Where did you really learn to shoot? Before Emma could answer, a voice interrupted. Beautiful shooting, ma'am. They turned to find a lean Asian man in his early 40s, wearing a competition shirt with multiple sponsor patches. His eyes were sharp, assessing, and when they met Emma's, understanding flickered there. Derek Chen, he introduced himself, shaking Jake's hand first. Former Army Ranger, now I run a tactical training company in Richmond. Jake Mitchell, Marines. This is Emma Clark, my student. Derek's handshake with Emma lasted a fraction longer than necessary. Your form is excellent, he said carefully. Very professional. Reminds me of someone I knew in the service. Emma's pulse quickened, but her expression remained neutral. Thank you, Jake's a great teacher. I'm sure he is. Derek's eyes held hers for a moment. Commander. The word was barely a whisper, but Emma heard it clearly. Jake, distracted by another competitor congratulating him, missed it entirely. Your secret's safe, Derek continued softly, then louder for Jake's benefit. You should be proud, Jake. Natural talent like this is rare. After Derek moved on, Emma felt exposed, vulnerable. If Derek had recognized her shooting signature, who else might? She'd been too comfortable, too careless. I need some air, she told Jake. Competition nerves. Sure, I'll grab us some water and meet you by the vendor tents. Emma nodded and wandered toward the crowded vendor area, her mind racing. She should leave, disappear again, find a new city, a new identity. But even as she thought it, she knew she wouldn't. Something about these weeks with Jake had awakened something she'd thought dead: connection, purpose, the satisfaction of teaching even while pretending to learn. She was so distracted, she almost walked directly into the man examining tactical rifle scopes at a vendor booth. Excuse me, she murmured, stepping aside. The man turned, and Emma's blood turned to ice. Viktor Kozlov. Older than the photos from his arrest file, grayer, but unmistakably the Russian arms dealer she'd helped capture 5 years ago during a joint CLFBI operation in Istanbul. He should have been in federal prison for 15 more years. Yet here he stood, shopping for optics like any other enthusiast. Their eyes met briefly. Emma kept her expression blank, just another face in the crowd. Victor's gaze passed over her without recognition. Why would he recognize her? He'd only seen Commander Mitchell once, in tactical gear and helmet during his arrest. This civilian woman with short brown hair bore no resemblance to that SEAL operator. Emma drifted away casually, but her training had already cataloged everything. Victor's companions, 3 men, all carrying concealed weapons, military bearing. His focus on long-range rifle equipment. His conversation with the vendor about security contracts in the area. She found a position behind a food truck where she could observe. Victor moved through the competition with purpose, approaching several shooters, including Jake. Emma's jaw clenched as she watched them talk, Victor's hand on Jake's shoulder, friendly but assessing. Jake laughed at something Victor said, then pulled out his phone. They were exchanging numbers. When Jake finally found Emma 20 minutes later, she was still watching Victor from a distance. There you are. Hey, I just met this guy Victor, Russian accent but cool. He's offering serious money for security work. Says he needs skilled shooters for executive protection. Could be exactly what I've been looking for, you know, something that matters. Jake, Emma turned to him, her voice urgent. Something feels wrong about that man, very wrong. Jake's expression shifted from excitement to irritation. What? You talked to him for like 5 seconds when you walked past. I've photographed a lot of people. You learn to read body language. His associates, they're not security, they're military, and not the good kind. Emma, you've been shooting for 3 weeks. Jake's tone was condescending now, the patient teacher correcting an overreaching student. I think I can judge people better than you can. I was a Marine NCO. I know operators when I see them. That's exactly what worries me. Look, I appreciate the concern, But this is my career we're talking about. Victor's offering $50,000 for a 2-week contract. That's more than I make in 6 months doing corporate security." Emma wanted to scream. She wanted to grab Jake by his shoulders and tell him exactly who she was, that she'd spent a decade identifying threats like Viktor Kozlov, that every instinct she'd honed through years of operations was screaming danger. But she couldn't. Not here, not now, not without exposing herself completely. "Just promise me you'll be careful," she said quietly. "Please." Jake's expression softened slightly. "I will, but Emma, you gotta trust that I know what I'm doing. I've survived combat zones. I think I can handle a security job." As they walked back to the parking lot, Emma made her decision. Tonight, she'd conduct surveillance on Viktor Kozlov. She'd use skills she'd sworn to leave behind, hack into databases she shouldn't access, pull strings with contacts who thought she'd disappeared. Because if Viktor was free and operating in Virginia, people were going to die. And this time, Emma refused to stand by and let it happen. Behind them, Viktor watched from his SUV, his phone displaying the photo he'd taken of Emma and Jake at the range weeks ago. The facial recognition software was still running, searching through military databases his connections had provided access to. A match would take time, but Viktor was patient. Very patient indeed. Emma sat in her Honda Civic 3 blocks from Viktor Kozlov's hotel at 2:47 a.m., her laptop balanced on her steering wheel, connected to networks that officially didn't exist. The skills she'd sworn to abandon came back like breathing: surveillance, infiltration, intelligence gathering. It had taken her 6 hours to track Viktor from the competition to the Riverside Marriott. Another 4 hours to hack into the hotel's security system and identify his room. Now she watched grainy footage of Viktor meeting with 5 men in Suite 412, their body language aggressive, purposeful. She couldn't hear their conversation, but she didn't need to. The blueprint spread across Viktor's table told her everything. The federal building in downtown Richmond, marked with entry points, security camera locations, and what looked like blast radius calculations. Emma's hands tightened on her laptop. Viktor wasn't just free, he was planning a terrorist attack. She pulled up her encrypted phone, a device from her sealed days she'd kept just in case, and drafted an anonymous tip to the FBI field office. Detailed information about Viktor's location, his companions, the hotel suite number, and the nature of the threat. She routed it through 7 proxy servers before sending. The message would reach them by morning. Federal agents would investigate, arrest Viktor, and Jake would be safe from whatever security job Viktor was offering. Crisis averted. Emma drove home as dawn broke, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her apartment was a modest 1-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, anonymous, forgettable, safe. She'd chosen it specifically because nothing about it suggested a former Navy SEAL lived there. She parked in her usual spot and trudged up the stairs, thinking about coffee and sleep in that order. She didn't notice the black SUV parked 2 streets over, or the tablet inside displaying a bright red match notification. Viktor stared at his screen in disbelief, then rage. Match found, 94.7% probability. Emma Clark/Emma Mitchell. Commander, U.S. Navy SEALs, retired. Specialization, sniper counter-terrorism. Notable operations: Istanbul arms interdiction 2020, subject captured. The woman from the shooting range, Jake Mitchell's student, the amateur who'd fumbled with her pistol and asked beginner questions. She was the SEAL commander who'd led the operation that destroyed his network and sent him to prison. Viktor's 4 years in federal custody had been hell: isolation, interrogation, constant threat from both inmates and guards. He'd only gotten out 3 months ago through a technicality, his lawyers arguing procedural errors in his arrest. The warrant that had authorized the raid, obtained through information Commander Emma Mitchell had provided. And now she was here, in Richmond, pretending to be a civilian photographer. She'd sent the FBI tip. Victor's contact in the Bureau, a corrupt analyst he'd cultivated during his trial, had forwarded him the anonymous message within minutes of its arrival. The information was too specific, too accurate. Only someone with training could have conducted that level of surveillance. She'd found him, which meant she knew about the operation. Which meant she had to die, tonight. Victor made 3 phone calls. His men were experienced, former Spetsnaz operatives who'd followed him to America when their own government had disavowed them. They understood the mission: eliminate the threat silently, make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. By sunrise, Commander Emma Mitchell would be erased. Permanently. Emma had just stepped out of the shower when her instincts, honed through 100 combat operations, screamed danger. The apartment was too quiet. No ambient street noise from the window she'd left cracked open. No hum from the refrigerator, which meant someone had cut her power at the breaker. She moved instantly, wrapping a towel around herself and reaching for the Sig Sauer P226 she kept in a false-bottom drawer beside her bed. The weapon felt like coming home, an old friend she'd missed desperately. The lock on her front door clicked. Professional work, too smooth to be a random burglar. Emma positioned herself in the bedroom doorway, gun raised, controlled breathing slowing her heart rate. 2 men entered her apartment, tactical gear, suppressed weapons, military precision. A third remained in the hallway as rear security. They expected a civilian photographer, maybe armed, maybe not, but certainly not a threat. They'd made a fatal miscalculation. Bedroom clear, the first operative whispered in Russian, approaching her position. Emma moved like water. She stepped out, struck the first man's weapon hand with her forearm, redirecting his aim. Her knee drove into his solar plexus as her elbow snapped up into his jaw. He dropped, unconscious before he hit the floor. The second operative reacted fast, training evident in his smooth weapon transition. But Emma was faster. She'd trained for this scenario 1,000 times. She closed the distance before he could fire, trapped his weapon arm against his body, and used his own momentum to throw him into the wall. Her pistol's butt struck his temple with surgical precision. 2 down in 4 seconds. The third man in the hallway heard the commotion and charged in, weapon raised. Emma dove behind her couch as suppressed rounds punched through the fabric. She rolled, came up firing, 3 controlled shots. Center mass, head. The man fell backward into the hallway. Silence. Emma's hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but inside something had broken. The civilian life she'd carefully constructed was burning down around her. She'd killed again. Not in war, not in some distant country, but in her own apartment in suburban Virginia. The seal had returned, whether she wanted it or not. She cleared her apartment systematically, confirmed all 3 men were incapacitated or dead, then assessed the situation. Victor had found her, which meant staying here was suicide. She had maybe 30 minutes before he sent a second team or called the police himself with a fabricated story. Emma dressed quickly, dark tactical pants, boots, a jacket. She grabbed her go-bag from the closet, the one she'd kept packed for 3 years just in case. Cash, fake IDs, weapons, encrypted communications equipment. The survival kit of someone who'd never really believed her war was over. She was throwing the bag in her car when the first police sirens echoed in the distance. Neighbors had heard the commotion, called 911. Emma cursed and accelerated out of the parking lot, heading for the safe house Derek Chen maintained. He'd mentioned it once during their brief conversation at the competition, a subtle offer of help if she ever needed it. As she drove, Emma's phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Home invasion attempt in Riverside neighborhood. 3 injured suspect fled. Her old life was officially over. Jake Mitchell was drinking his morning coffee when the news report appeared on his TV. The address mentioned was familiar. He dropped Emma off there twice after range sessions when her car had been in the shop. His blood ran cold. He grabbed his phone, called Emma's number, straight to voicemail. 20 minutes later, Jake stood behind police tape outside Emma's destroyed apartment, his heart hammering. The front door hung off its hinges, blood on the carpet, emergency vehicles everywhere. Jake. He turned to find Derek Chen approaching, his expression grim. "What happened?" Jake demanded. "Where's Emma? Is she?" "She's alive," Derek said quietly, "but we need to talk somewhere private." They sat in Derek's truck 3 blocks away. Derek pulled up a photo on his tablet, a military service portrait Jake recognized instantly. Commander Emma Mitchell, his legendary instructor from Quantico. Beside it, a recent photo of Emma Clark at the shooting range. "Same person." "No," Jake whispered, "that's not. Emma's a photographer, she's a beginner. I've been teaching her for 3 weeks. "You've been teaching Commander Emma Mitchell Clark," Derek said gently. "One of the most decorated snipers in SEAL history, 87 confirmed kills. She trained at least 60 elite snipers during her career, including you at Quantico in 2012. Jake's world tilted. Every interaction suddenly reframed. Her mistakes that tested his teaching, her careful questions that pushed him to think deeper, her occasional slips into perfect form she'd immediately corrected. "She played me," Jake said, humiliation and anger rising. "She let me teach her things she fucking invented." "Or," Derek countered, "she wanted to see who you'd become. Emma left the SEALs after Kandahar, lost 3 teammates on an operation she led. She blamed herself, developed PTSD, disappeared. Maybe meeting you again was her way of reconnecting with who she used to be. By making a fool of me. By trusting you enough to be vulnerable." Derek's voice was firm. "3 men just tried to kill her, Jake. Viktor Kozlov, the arms dealer you met at the competition. He's the one she helped capture 5 years ago. He found her and now she's running for her life." Jake stared at the photos, emotions warring inside him. Betrayal, awe, fear, understanding. "Where is she?" "Safe house, and she's going after Victor before he completes whatever operation he's planning." Derek met Jake's eyes. "Question is, are you going to help your old commander, or let pride stop you?" Jake thought about Tor's bleeding out on that Raqqa rooftop, about the emptiness he'd felt since leaving the Corps, about Emma, Commander Mitchell, patiently teaching him humility while he'd arrogantly taught her fundamentals she'd mastered 20 years ago. "Tell me where she is," Jake said. His pride or his purpose? Finally, he was ready to choose. The safe house was a nondescript ranch home in Chesterfield County, 40 minutes from Richmond. Derek had purchased it years ago under a shell company, a retreat for operators who needed to disappear temporarily. Emma sat at the kitchen table, her Sig Sauer field stripped before her, cleaning it with mechanical precision. The familiar ritual kept her hands busy while her mind raced. 3 men dead or injured, her cover destroyed, Victor hunting her, and somewhere out there, Jake Mitchell believed she was just a photographer who'd survived a random home invasion. The sound of tires on gravel made her tense. Her hand moved to the loaded Glock beside her cleaning kit. Through the window, she saw Derek's truck and Jake Mitchell climbing out of the passenger seat. Emma's stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. Derek entered first, hands raised peacefully. "Before you shoot anyone, let me explain." "You told him." Emma's voice was flat, dangerous. "He deserved to know," Derek said. "And you need help, Victor won't stop." Jake walked in, and Emma saw everything in his face: shock, betrayal, anger, and something else. Hurt. The look of a student who discovered his mentor had been lying to him for weeks. "Commander Mitchell," Jake said, and the formal title felt like a slap. "Or should I call you Emma? I'm not sure which name is real anymore." "Both are real," Emma said quietly. Emma Mitchell was my married name. I went back to Clark after the divorce. And the photographer story, the beginner who needed help, all of it bullshit. Not all of it. Emma met his eyes. The part about needing help, that was true, just not the kind of help you thought. Jake laughed bitterly. You let me teach you. For 3 weeks I explained fundamentals you invented. I told you about Commander Mitchell, about you, like you were some legend I'd never meet again. And you just played along. I wanted to see who you'd become, Emma said. The Jake Mitchell I trained at Quantico was 23, talented but arrogant. I needed to know if that cocky corporal had grown into someone who understood humility, someone who could teach for the right reasons. So this was a test, Jake's voice rose. You made me look like an idiot to test my character. You weren't an idiot, Emma shot back. You were a good teacher, patient, thorough, humble. You'd learned the most important lesson, that teaching isn't about showing off your skills, it's about genuinely helping someone improve. The Jake Mitchell from 2012 couldn't have done that. Don't, Jake's hand sliced through the air. Don't try to make this about my growth. You lied to me. Every session, every conversation, every moment I thought we were connecting, it was all based on a lie. Emma stood facing him across the table. You're right. I lied about my identity, but everything else was real. My respect for your teaching, my interest in who you'd become. The conversations about tours, about survivor's guilt, about finding purpose after service, those were real, Jake. I wasn't playing a role then. How would I know? How would I know any of it was real? The question hung in the air like smoke. Emma felt the weight of it, the impossibility of proving authentic emotion to someone whose trust you'd betrayed. You wouldn't, she admitted quietly. You'd have to choose to believe me. Jake turned away, hands braced against the kitchen counter. Derek remained silent, letting them work through it. Why did you really leave the SEALs? Jake asked finally. I told you the rumors, but I want the truth, from you. Emma sat back down, suddenly exhausted. This was the story she'd spent 3 years running from, the nightmare she relived every night. Kandahar Province, 2021, she began, her voice distant. I was leading a team, 6 operators including me. We'd received intelligence about a high-value Taliban target meeting in a compound outside the city. The intel looked solid. Multiple sources, confirmed locations, the whole package. Jake turned back to face her, listening. We went in at 200. Martinez, Chen, Thompson, 3 of the best snipers I'd ever trained were my Overwatch team. The other 2 were entry specialists. I led the assault team. Emma's hands clenched. The compound was empty. The entire thing was a trap. IEDs in the courtyard, insurgents in the surrounding buildings. We were ambushed within 90 seconds of breaching the perimeter. Her voice cracked. Martinez died instantly, RPG to his position. Chen and Thompson held their positions, providing covering fire while we extracted. They gave us time to get out, but they couldn't get out themselves. I ordered them to retreat, but the killing zone was too tight. I watched them die through my scope while I ran to safety. Jake's anger had faded, replaced by recognition. He knew this story. Every operator knew it. The fear of being the one who survives while your team doesn't. The intelligence was bad, Emma continued. My decision to trust it, my tactics, my leadership, it all got 3 men killed. The Navy cleared me of wrongdoing, said I'd made reasonable decisions based on available information. But those 3 men had families, Jake. Martinez's daughter was 5 years old. Chen's wife was pregnant. Thompson was engaged. And you couldn't forgive yourself, Jake said softly. How could I? I trained them. I led them. I brought them to that compound and watched them die. Emma looked up, tears finally breaking through her control. So yes, I left. I changed my name, moved away, tried to become someone who didn't have 87 confirmed kills and 3 dead teammates haunting every moment. Jake pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. His anger hadn't disappeared, but understanding had joined it. When I saw you at the range that first day, Emma said, Fumbling with your weapon, you looked so uncertain. And I remembered training you, this confident, skilled corporal who thought he knew everything. I was curious what had changed you. So I played the role, thinking maybe I'd learned something about myself by seeing what my training had created. You were testing yourself as much as me, Jake realized. Maybe, I don't know anymore. But these past 3 weeks teaching you while you taught me, watching you help someone you thought was struggling, seeing you be patient and kind, it reminded me why I loved being an instructor, why I joined the SEALs in the first place. Derek cleared his throat. As touching as this therapy session is, we have a more immediate problem. Viktor Kozlov is planning a terrorist attack, and he now knows Emma's alive and capable of stopping him. He'll accelerate his timeline. Jake looked between them. What's the target? Federal building downtown, Emma said, pulling up blueprints on her laptop. I surveilled Victor's hotel room. He has detailed plans, entry points, security vulnerabilities, blast radius calculations. There's a senator speaking there Thursday at noon. Senator Richardson, the one pushing for stricter arms trafficking laws. 3 days from now, Jake calculated. Victor wants revenge on the system that imprisoned him, Emma explained. Killing a senator while destroying federal property sends a message, and he's connected to a domestic militia group, white nationalists who have been waiting for an opportunity like this. Jake studied the blueprints, his tactical mind already working. FBI. I sent an anonymous tip, but Victor has someone inside feeding him information. We can't trust the Bureau to handle this quietly. So we do it ourselves, Jake said slowly. 3 of us against Victor's team. 6 men, all former Spetsnaz, Derek added. Well-armed, well-trained, highly motivated. Jake laughed without humor. Sounds like a normal Tuesday for SEALs. You're not a SEAL, Emma pointed out. No, but I was trained by the best. Jake met her eyes. I'm still angry, Emma. I'm still hurt that you lied. But Tors died because I couldn't save him. I've spent 2 years wondering what purpose my life has if I can't protect people. So yeah, I'll help you stop Victor. And afterward we'll figure out whether we can trust each other again. Emma nodded slowly. That's fair. One condition, Jake added. No more lies, no more playing roles. If we're doing this, we're doing it as equals. You're Commander Mitchell, I'm Corporal Mitchell. No pretending otherwise. Former commander, Emma corrected. I left that rank behind. Maybe, Jake said. But right now, I need that commander to help me stop a terrorist attack. Can you do that? Emma looked at the blueprints, at Derek's confident stance, at Jake's determined expression. 3 years of running, of hiding, of pretending to be someone smaller than she was, all of it had led to this moment. Yes, she said, I can do that. Derek smiled. Outstanding, then let's plan an operation. As they bent over the blueprints together, Emma felt something shift inside her. The civilian photographer was gone. The guilt-ridden veteran was receding. What remained was Commander Emma Mitchell Clark, Navy SEAL, and she had a mission to complete. The safe house kitchen had transformed into a tactical operations center. Derek had brought equipment from his training company, communications gear, surveillance equipment, tactical maps of downtown Richmond. Emma's laptop displayed satellite imagery of the federal building, alongside Victor's stolen blueprints. Jake stood across the table from Emma, their earlier confrontation hanging between them like cordite smoke. Professional necessity had forced a truce, but trust remained fractured. Talk us through it, Derek said, breaking the silence. Commander. Emma hesitated at the title, then accepted it. Jake was right. This mission needed Commander Mitchell, not Emma Clark, the photographer. Victor has 6 men, all former Russian special forces, she began, her voice shifting into briefing mode, crisp, analytical, authoritative. 3 will position as snipers in surrounding buildings. 2 will plant the vehicle-borne IED at the south entrance. Victor himself will trigger the device remotely from a safe distance. Jake leaned over the blueprints. his tactical mind engaging despite his lingering anger. The senator's speech is scheduled for noon in the main auditorium. Maximum casualties would require the explosion during or just after the speech when people are exiting. Exactly. Emma pulled up a timeline. Victor will position his snipers between 1,000 and 1,100 hours. The vehicle arrives at 11:45. Detonation at 12:05, right when the crowd is densest. FBI presence, Derek asked. Standard security for a senator, 4 agents, local police support. Not enough if they're caught in the initial blast. Emma's fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up building schematics. The auditorium is here, ground floor. A vehicle bomb at the south entrance would collapse this section, potentially killing 50 to 100 people. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Tor's face flashed in his mind, the young sergeant bleeding out while Jake pressed desperately against his wounds. He'd failed to save Tor's. He wouldn't fail again. So we stop them before they get into position, Jake said. Hit Victor's team before the operation begins. No, Emma shook her head. We don't know where they're staging from, and Victor will have changed locations after last night. If we tip our hand too early, he'll abort and try again later somewhere we can't predict. Then what's the play? Emma stood, moving to the satellite imagery. Her bearing had changed completely, shoulders back, movements precise, voice carrying command authority Jake remembered from Quantico. This was Commander Mitchell, and seeing her fully emerge was like watching a master painter return to her canvas. We let the operation begin, Emma said. We identify their positions as they deploy, then we neutralize each element systematically before they can execute. That's insane, Jake protested. We're 3 people against 6 trained operators in an urban environment with civilian density. I know the risks, Corporal. Emma's tone was sharp, instructor addressing student. But it's the only way to guarantee we get all of them. Miss one sniper and people die. Let Victor escape and he tries again. Jake bristled at being called corporal but recognized the tactic. Emma was establishing operational hierarchy, ensuring clear command structure. He'd done the same thing as an NCO. Okay, Commander, Jake said, emphasizing the title. Walk us through the plan. Emma's expression softened slightly, acknowledgement that Jake understood what she was doing. She pulled up a tactical overlay. Derek, you're our mobile element. You'll surveil the likely sniper positions here, here, and here. She marked 3 high-rise buildings surrounding the federal building. Once you identify their locations, you'll coordinate with local SWAT to move in simultaneously. Why involve SWAT? Derek asked. Because we need legal authority to arrest armed men in occupied buildings. Anonymous tips won't cut it. We need real-time intelligence and coordination. Emma turned to Jake. You'll handle the vehicle-borne IED. Victor will use a commercial van or truck, something that can hold enough explosives to bring down a building section. How do I identify it? You won't need to. I will. Emma pulled up traffic camera feeds she'd hacked into, something Jake realized he shouldn't be surprised she could do. I'll be in overwatch position here, on the Riverside Tower rooftop, 800 yards from the federal building with clear sight lines to all approach routes. When the vehicle arrives, I'll identify it and guide you to intercept. Jake studied the tower location, calculating angles and distances. That's a hell of a shot if you need to engage. I've made harder shots. Emma's voice was quiet but certain. If the vehicle reaches the building, I can disable it before detonation. But that's last resort, too much risk of premature explosion. And Victor. Once his men are neutralized and the vehicle is stopped, he'll run. Derek tracks him while I provide overwatch. Emma met Jake's eyes. You'll pursue on foot. When you have him cornered, I'll coordinate FBI response. Victor gets arrested, legally and properly, with evidence that will keep him in prison for life. Jake processed the plan, looking for flaws. It was ambitious, required perfect timing and coordination, and relied heavily on Emma's sniper skills. But it was also elegant, each element building on the others, multiple contingencies, clear objectives. It was brilliant. You've been planning this since last night, Jake realized. I've been planning operations like this for 15 years, Emma corrected. This is what I do, Jake. What I did. Taking incomplete intelligence, limited resources, and impossible odds, then creating a tactical solution that minimizes casualties while achieving the objective. Derek whistled low. This is why you were a legend, Commander. Jake watched Emma work, saw her fingers dancing across the keyboard, pulling up more intelligence, traffic patterns, weather forecasts, police shift schedules. Every detail considered, every variable accounted for. This was the instructor he'd idolized at Quantico, the tactical genius who'd taught him that perfect planning prevented catastrophic failures. Except Kandahar had taught her that even perfect planning couldn't prevent every catastrophe. What if something goes wrong? Jake asked quietly. What if the plan fails? Emma stopped typing, her hands stilling on the keyboard. The question hung heavy, both of them remembering their failures, their dead teammates, their survivor's guilt. Then we adapt, Emma said finally. That's the other lesson, Jake. The one I learned after you left Quantico. Plans fail. Intelligence is incomplete. People die despite our best efforts, but we don't give up. We adapt, we fight, and we save everyone we can. Even if we can't save everyone, Jake said. Especially then. They looked at each other across the table and something shifted. The anger didn't disappear. Jake still felt betrayed. Emma still carried her guilt. But underneath it, recognition emerged. They were both warriors carrying impossible weights, both trying to find redemption through protecting others. I need to ask you something, Jake said. At Quantico, you taught us that the hardest part of being a sniper isn't taking the shot. It's living with every shot you didn't take, every person you couldn't save. Do you still believe that? Emma was quiet for a long moment. Yes, but I also learned something else. The shots we do take, the people we do save, they matter too. I spent 3 years focusing on Martinez, Chen, and Thompson. On the 3 I lost. I forgot about the hundreds I saved through the operations I led, the thousands saved by the snipers I trained. Like me, Jake said. Like you, Emma managed a small smile. You saved lives in Syria, Jake. Even with Tor's death, even with that failure, you saved others. That counts. That matters. Jake nodded slowly, feeling something loosen in his chest. So we save people Thursday. We save people Thursday, Emma agreed. Derek cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt the therapy session, but we have 60 hours to prepare. Commander, what do you need from us? Emma's command presence returned fully. Derek, I need full surveillance packages for those 3 buildings. Access points, security systems, floor plans. Jake, you're with me for weapons preparation. We'll need long-range precision rifles, communications equipment, and backup armaments. Going shopping at my facility, Derek said, standing. I'll have everything ready by tonight. After Derek left, Emma and Jake worked in tense silence, reviewing the plan's details. The awkwardness remained, but underneath it, professional respect was rebuilding. I really am sorry, Emma said after an hour. For lying, for testing you, you deserved better. Jake didn't answer immediately, making final notes on the building layouts. You were right, though. The corporal you trained at Quantico was arrogant. He thought skill was enough. He hadn't learned about failure yet. And now I understand why you taught us humility alongside marksmanship. Jake looked up. You knew we'd fail eventually. You were preparing us for it. I was preparing you to survive it, Emma corrected. Physically and mentally, failure breaks some operators. I wanted my students to bend instead of shattering. Did it work for you? Emma smiled sadly. I'm still figuring that out. But this mission, stopping Victor, protecting innocent people, working with someone I trained who became someone I respect. Maybe it's part of bending back." "Then let's make sure it works," Jake said, "because I don't want to lose anyone else. Not after tours, not after everything." "Neither do I." Emma extended her hand across the table. "Partners." Jake looked at her hand, the hand of his former commander, his deceiver, his ally. He thought about pride and purpose, about anger and forgiveness, about the choice he'd made to help despite the betrayal. He shook her hand. "Partners, but Emma." "Yes. After this is over, after we stop Victor and save those people, we're going to have a long conversation about trust." "I know," Emma said, "and I'll answer every question honestly, I promise." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't absolution, but it was a beginning. And for now, with 60 hours until Victor's attack, a beginning was enough. Thursday morning arrived cold and clear, perfect shooting weather. Emma positioned herself on the Riverside Tower rooftop at 6:30 hours, 3.5 hours before Senator Richardson's scheduled speech. Her Macmillan TAC-50 rifle lay before her, barrel still cool, scope calibrated for the 800-yard distance to the federal building. Through her earpiece, Derek's voice crackled. "Overwatch, this is Mobile 1. In position at Building Alpha." "Copy, Mobile 1," Emma replied, scanning the urban landscape through her scope. "Maintain surveillance on floors 12 through 15. "Ground unit status?" Emma asked. Jake's voice came through from street level. "Ground unit in position, southwest quadrant, vehicle checkpoint established. I've got eyes on the south entrance." Emma allowed herself a small smile. Jake had adapted to her command structure seamlessly, his Marine training meshing perfectly with her operational style. Whatever personal tensions remained between them, professionally they worked like a well-oiled machine. "All units, we are weapons hot," Emma said. "Estimated enemy arrival window is 1,000 to 1,100 hours. Stay sharp." The waiting began, the hardest part of any operation. Emma's mind wanted to drift to Kandahar, to Martinez and Chen and Thompson taking their positions just like this before everything went to hell. She forced the thoughts away. This wasn't Kandahar. This time she had complete intelligence. This time everyone would make it home. At 10:23 hours, Derek's urgent whisper broke the silence. "Overwatch, I've got movement. Building Alpha, 14th floor, southwest corner office. One male military bearing setting up a rifle." Emma swung her scope to the location. Through the office window, she spotted him, a lean man with close-cropped hair assembling what looked like a Dragunov SVD. Former Spetsnaz, just as she'd predicted. "Confirmed," Emma said. "Sniper 1 identified, continue surveillance." Over the next 30 minutes, Derek located the other 2 snipers, one in Building Bravo, one in Building Charlie. Emma marked each position, calculating angles, wind drift, backup plans if she needed to engage. "Mobile 1, contact local SWAT," Emma ordered. "Give them the positions. Coordinate simultaneous entry at 11:45 hours, 15 minutes before the vehicle is scheduled to arrive." "Copy, calling it in now." At 11:42 hours, Emma watched 3 SWAT teams converge on the sniper positions simultaneously. Professional, coordinated, textbook execution. Through her scope, she saw the first sniper being taken down before he even knew they were there. The others followed within seconds. "All snipers neutralized," Derek confirmed. "No shots fired, no civilian casualties." "Outstanding work, Mobile 1. Emma felt the first knot of tension release. 3 threats down, 3 to go. At 11:47 hours, Jake's voice came through, urgent but controlled. "Overwatch, I've got a white commercial van approaching from the east. Rental plates, 2 occupants, riding low, definitely carrying weight." Emma found the van in her scope. White Ford Transit moving slowly through traffic. The driver matched Victor's intelligence file, Dmitry Volkov, former Spetsnaz explosives expert. Confirmed, ground unit. That's our target. Stay on it but do not engage until my command. Copy. I've alerted patrol units to block side streets, channeling them toward the intercept point. Emma tracked the van through her scope, her breathing steady, heartbeat slow. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Too perfectly. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong, but she couldn't identify what. The van reached the intersection 3 blocks from the federal building. 2 police cars moved to intercept, lights flashing. The van stopped. Ground unit move in, Emma ordered. Support the patrol units. Jake sprinted from his position, weapon drawn but concealed under his jacket. Through her scope, Emma watched him approach the van's passenger side while uniformed officers covered the driver's door. Then everything went to hell. The van's back doors exploded outward. A third man, one they hadn't accounted for, emerged with an AK-47, firing at the police officers. One cop went down immediately. The other dove behind his cruiser. Contact, contact, Jake shouted. 3 hostiles, 1 wounded officer, civilian vehicles in the line of fire. Emma's scope found the shooter, but civilians were everywhere, running, panicking. She couldn't take the shot without risk of collateral damage. Ground unit, the shooter is yours, Emma said, forcing calm into her voice. I don't have a clean shot. Jake moved like the Marine she'd trained him to be. He used parked cars for cover, closed the distance, drew the shooter's attention away from the wounded officer. His Sig Sauer barked 3 times, controlled pairs, center mass. The shooter dropped. But the driver was accelerating, trying to ram through the police blockade. Vehicle is mobile, Jake yelled, heading your direction, overwatch. Emma's tactical mind raced. If the van reached the federal building, Victor could detonate remotely. Hundreds dead. She had maybe 30 seconds. The van swerved around the blockade, racing up the street toward the federal building. Emma tracked it through her scope, compensating for movement, wind, the downward angle from her elevated position. 800 yards, she whispered to herself. Moving target, deflection angle 12 degrees, wind 3 knots left to right. The calculations were instantaneous, muscle memory from 1,000 training sessions and 100 real-world shots. Emma's breathing slowed to almost nothing. Her finger rested on the trigger, applying pressure so gradually the brake would surprise even her. The van was 600 yards from the federal building. Emma found her heartbeat, felt the pause between pulses. 500 yards. She squeezed. The TAC-50 roared. The .50 caliber round traveled 800 yards in less than 2 seconds, struck the van's engine block at a shallow angle, and punched through into the transmission. The kinetic energy transferred from the massive bullet shattered the engine's mounting, twisted the drive shaft, and brought 5,000 pounds of vehicle to an instant, violent stop. The van slewed sideways, crashed into a parked car, and died. Target neutralized, Emma said calmly, though her heart hammered. Vehicle is immobile. Ground unit secure the driver. Jake reached the crashed van, weapon drawn, and dragged the dazed driver out onto the pavement. Driver secured. He's alive but disoriented. Bomb squad is rolling. Emma scanned the area through her scope, looking for Victor. He'd been watching, waiting to trigger the device. Now that his operation had failed, he'd be running. Mobile 1, where's our principal target? Derek's voice came back excited. I've got him. Black Mercedes heading north on Broad Street. He just abandoned a surveillance position 2 blocks east. Stay on him, Emma ordered. Do not engage, just track. She broke down her rifle with practiced efficiency, packed it into her case, and was moving toward the stairs within 90 seconds. Her phone showed Victor's location via Derek's GPS tracker. Ground unit, converge on Mobile 1's position, Emma said, racing down the stairwell. We're not letting Victor escape. On my way, Jake confirmed. The chase led through downtown Richmond. Victor's Mercedes weaving through traffic, Derek's pursuit vehicle maintaining distance, Emma coordinating from her truck while simultaneously calling in FBI units. Victor made his mistake at the Belvedere Street Bridge. He tried to run a red light, clipped another car, and crashed into the bridge's concrete barrier. His Mercedes was drivable but stuck, the front end crumpled. Jake's vehicle screeched to a stop 40 yards behind. He was out and moving before Victor could recover, weapon raised, voice commanding. "Federal operation, hands where I can see them, now." Victor emerged from the Mercedes, hands up, his face a mask of rage and defeat. He recognized Jake from the shooting competition, understood that he'd been played. "You," Victor spat, "the Marine." "Former Marine," Jake corrected. "And you're under arrest for terrorism, conspiracy to commit murder, and being generally bad at your job." Emma arrived 30 seconds later, her presence making Victor's eyes widen in recognition and fury. "Commander Mitchell," he said bitterly, "I should have killed you when I had the chance." "You should have stayed in prison," Emma replied. "Jake, he's all yours." FBI vehicles surrounded the bridge within minutes. Special Agent Sarah Chen, Emma's old contact from the Istanbul operation, took custody of Victor personally. "Commander Mitchell," Chen said warmly, shaking Emma's hand, "I heard you'd retired." "I did. Turns out retirement didn't suit me." "And your team?" Chen looked at Jake and Derek. "Associates," Emma said. "Very capable associates who helped prevent a major terrorist attack. I'll send you my full report." As FBI agents led Victor away, Emma and Jake stood by the bridge railing, watching the James River flow below. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving exhaustion and the heavy satisfaction of a mission successfully completed. "That shot on the van," Jake said quietly. 800 yards, moving target, urban environment with civilians everywhere. I've never seen anything like it." "I've had practice," Emma said. All those stories about Commander Mitchell, about impossible shots, about operations that shouldn't have succeeded, they weren't exaggerated at all, were they? "No," Emma admitted. "If anything, they were understated. Classified operations don't make the best war stories." Jake turned to face her. "I spent 3 weeks teaching you how to shoot. You must have been laughing at me the entire time." "I was never laughing," Emma said seriously. "I was learning, not about shooting, about you, about the kind of man you'd become, about whether my training had created someone who used his skills for the right reasons. And you're exactly the kind of operator I hoped you'd be. Skilled, brave, and humble enough to know that skill and bravery aren't enough. You think before you shoot. You protect civilians. You lead from the front. Tours would be proud of the Marine you became." Jake's eyes were wet. "Thank you for that. Thank you for trusting me today, for following orders from someone who lied to you. That took real courage." Derek joined them, grinning. "Nice work, team. Victor's going away forever, the senator's safe, and we stopped a major attack. I'd call that a win." Emma smiled, a real, genuine smile that felt foreign after 3 years of careful neutrality. "Yes, I'd call that a win." As they walked back to their vehicles, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced since Kandahar. Not redemption, she'd never fully have that, but purpose. The knowledge that her training, her skills, her experience still mattered, that she could still protect people, still make a difference. Maybe Commander Mitchell wasn't as dead as she'd thought. Maybe she'd just been waiting for the right mission to come back. 3 weeks after Victor's arrest, Jake found himself standing outside Emma's new apartment in Glen Allen, a quiet suburb north of Richmond where she'd relocated after the safe house. He held 2 cups of coffee and a bag of pastries from the bakery she'd mentioned liking during one of their range sessions. He knocked, unsure if he was ready for this conversation, but knowing it needed to happen. Emma opened the door wearing jeans and a faded navy t-shirt, her hair still damp from a shower. Without the careful civilian disguise she'd maintained, She looked more like the commander from his memories, confident, alert, present. "Jake," she said, stepping aside, "come in." The apartment was sparse but comfortable. A few photographs on the walls, landscapes, not people, books on military history and tactical theory. A gun safe in the corner that Jake suspected held considerably more than a photographer's equipment. "Coffee and apologies," Jake said, handing her a cup, "though I'm not sure which one you need more." Emma smiled. "Both are appreciated. Sit." They settled on her couch, the awkwardness of their last real conversation, the angry confrontation at the safe house, hanging between them. "You said after this was over we'd have a long conversation about trust," Emma began. "I owe you that. Ask me anything." Jake sipped his coffee, organizing his thoughts. "Why me? Of all your former students, why did you engage with me at the range?" "Honestly, at first I didn't plan to. I was testing a new concealed carry weapon, deliberately looking awkward to avoid attention. But when you approached offering to help, I recognized you immediately." Emma paused. "Corporal Jake Mitchell, one of the cockiest, most talented students I ever trained. I was curious what combat and time had done to that arrogance. And you decided the best way to find out was to let me make a fool of myself." "No," Emma said firmly. "I decided the best way was to see how you'd teach someone you thought was struggling. Teaching reveals character, Jake. How you treat people you perceive as beneath your skill level shows who you really are." Jake absorbed that, and what did you learn? That you'd grown into someone I'd be proud to serve with. Patient, thorough, genuinely interested in helping someone improve. The Jake Mitchell from Quantico would have shown off his skills. The Jake Mitchell I met at the range focused entirely on my development, or what he thought was my development. "I told you about Commander Mitchell," Jake said quietly. "About my legendary instructor. You listened to me worship you while pretending to be someone else. That feels cruel, Emma." "It does," she acknowledged. "And I'm genuinely sorry for that. But Jake, hearing what my training meant to you, how it shaped your career, how you still carried my lessons, that was healing in ways I didn't expect. I left the SEALs believing I'd failed as an instructor because 3 students died. You reminded me that dozens lived because of what I taught them." Jake was quiet, processing. "When did you decide to tell me the truth?" "I hadn't decided. I was giving it one more week, then I would have either revealed myself or disappeared." Emma's voice grew heavy. "Victor made the decision for me. When he found me, when those men came to my apartment, I had to choose between maintaining my cover and protecting you from a threat you didn't understand you were walking into. The security job he offered me was recruitment for his terrorist cell. You would have been complicit in mass murder, Jake, or you would have discovered the truth and been eliminated as a liability." Emma met his eyes. "I couldn't let that happen, not to you. Because I was your student. Because you'd become my friend." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "These past 3 weeks, the conversations about tours, about finding purpose, about survivor's guilt, those weren't performance, Jake. I was being more honest with you than I'd been with anyone since Kandahar. You understood things I didn't have to explain because you'd lived them too." Jake felt his anger finally beginning to dissolve. "I spent 2 years thinking I was alone in this guilt. That tour's death made me weak, broken, unsuitable for the life I trained for. Then this photographer showed up asking beginner questions while somehow understanding exactly what I was feeling." "Because I was feeling it too," Emma said. "Every range session, every conversation, I was working through my own trauma alongside yours. Maybe that's why I kept the deception going. Being Emma Clark, amateur photographer, was safer than being Commander Mitchell, failed leader of dead operators." "You weren't a failed leader," Jake said. "The operation failed, the intelligence failed, but you did everything right with bad information. That's not failure, that's combat." "You sound like my therapist." "I sound like someone who learned from the best instructor in the Navy that sometimes good people die despite your best efforts. And surviving that doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. Emma laughed through tears. I did teach you that, didn't I? You did, and then you forgot it yourself. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing 3 weeks of deception, danger, and eventual understanding. So where does this leave us? Jake asked finally. Can we trust each other? Emma considered the question carefully. I think trust isn't something we have or don't have. It's something we build through honesty and time. I betrayed your trust by lying about my identity. But in the operation, when it mattered most, I trusted you completely. And you trusted me to lead despite your anger. That's a foundation we can build on. Will you keep teaching? Jake asked. Real teaching, not the performance art version. Emma smiled. Actually, yes. The CIA reached out after the Victor operation. They want me to develop a civilian contractor training program, advanced sniper instruction for operators who need specialized skills. It's what I loved most about the SEALs, passing on knowledge, preparing people to survive impossible situations. That's amazing, Emma. You'll be incredible at it. I was hoping you'd help me. Emma's expression turned serious. I need an assistant instructor, someone who understands both the technical skills and the psychological preparation, someone who's experienced combat, loss, and the struggle to find purpose afterward, someone who knows how to teach with patience instead of ego. Jake's heart raced. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a partnership. You teach alongside me, help develop curriculum, work with students who need exactly what we both needed, a chance to use our skills for something meaningful. Emma leaned forward. I can't change the fact that I deceived you, Jake, but I can offer you something real, authentic mentorship, genuine partnership, and the opportunity to help prevent other operators from drowning in the same guilt we both carried. Jake thought about tours, about 2 years of meaningless security contracts, about the emptiness he'd felt since leaving the Marines. Then he thought about the operation, how Emma's leadership had felt right, how working towards something meaningful had awakened parts of himself he'd thought dead. I want one condition, he said. Name it. No more secrets. We're honest with each other, about operations, about struggles, about when we're not okay. Deal. Emma extended her hand. Deal. Full honesty, complete transparency, genuine partnership. Jake shook her hand, then pulled her into a hug. Thank you, Commander, for the lessons at Quantico, for the strange mentorship at the range, and for reminding me why I became a Marine in the first place. Emma hugged him back, feeling 3 years of isolation finally breaking. Thank you for being the kind of man who made me remember why I became an instructor. And Jake, call me Emma. Commander Mitchell is my work identity. With you, I want to just be Emma. Okay, Emma, when do we start? Monday, CIA facility in Langley. We have our first class of students, 6 operators who need what we can teach them. As Jake left that evening, Emma stood at her window watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. For the first time since Kandahar, she felt like herself again. Not the broken veteran hiding from her past, not the legendary commander trapped by impossible expectations, but simply Emma Mitchell Clark, flawed, healing, and ready to teach again. Her phone buzzed with a message from Derek, heard about the CIA gig. Proud of you, Commander. You're going to change lives. Emma smiled and typed back, already have, and I'm just getting started. Across town, Jake sat in his apartment looking at the photo from the shooting competition. Him and Emma standing together, her with that mysterious smile he now understood. He'd been teaching his teacher, and somehow, they'd both learned exactly what they needed. Tor's photograph sat on his nightstand. Jake picked it up, studying his old friend's smile. I found it, brother, he whispered. The purpose, the mission, something worth doing. He could almost hear Tor's Texas drawl. Damn right you did, Corporal. Now go teach some people how to survive. Make me proud. I will, Jake promised. We both will. Monday morning arrived with new purpose. Emma and Jake stood together in the Langley training facility, 6 students waiting for instruction. Emma felt nervous, the good kind of nervous that meant something mattered. "Ready?" Jake asked. "Ready," Emma confirmed. "Let's teach them how to be warriors who stay human." As they walked into the classroom together, former commander and former student, mentor and partner, 2 people healing through purpose, Emma realized something profound. The story she'd been telling herself for 3 years, that her career ended in failure, that her teaching had been meaningless, was wrong. Her legacy wasn't the 3 she'd lost. It was the hundreds she'd saved, the dozens she'd trained, and the future operators she'd continue to prepare for the impossible burdens they'd carry. Commander Emma Mitchell Clark was back. And this time, she wasn't running from her past. She was building a future worth fighting for.